Okay. Well, good evening, everybody. I wish we were there in person in real life, but unfortunately, obviously, that would not be safe. So we're happy to join you. And then I think the hope will be maybe in the spring or summer, we will come out in real life and be able to see you guys in person then. So this evening, we're going to go through, Doug has a little bit of a presentation, a mini presentation, and then we'll go through the Economic Development Plan in a very high level form. And then we're going to have some time for some conversation and discussion and some questions. So you can fire at Todd and Doug and Stuart. So yeah. Okay, with that, I'm just going to bring up the PowerPoint and we will get going. Oh, Doug, actually, you can start yours first.
Yeah. I'll do that. Okay. Thank you, Heather. So I think I wanted to do this because it's important to set a bit of the the context. I think it's a lot of people get the impression. Sorry. There we go. From the beginning. There we go. A lot of people get this impression that economic development is something you do separate from community development, but it's not. They need to go hand in hand. And so when we worked on real actionable items that were focused on economic development, you'll see. But I want to give you some context about why we do this. Now, a lot of people keep talking about how the pandemic, COVID, has changed the world dramatically. And I mean, it has. Now we have to social distance. We can't hug or be close to each other. And we do a lot of work on Zoom. Like this is an example, the mediums, the message, we're doing this presentation on Zoom because we can't get together. And it has helped us realize just how much work we do that can be done online. And then, of course, it's not just work. We've got all sorts of tools available to us now to socialize online. My kids just showed me last week how, I forget which app it was, maybe it was Disney. You can watch a movie with someone else in another household. I know you could do that. I don't understand why they have to put it on an app, but I'm old. So, but we can now work and socialize online, and we've been forced to because of the pandemic. And that has also caused all sorts of other challenges and situations. It has made us, depressed. It has made us feel hopeless and lonely, and of course, it has also made us angry. It's made a lot of us angry and frustrated. And my rule that I tell everybody is your anger is a liar. If you're angry, you have a tendency to look for other things to make you angry because you feel like the world is a bad place. And we all know something bad happens at work, and you come home and you yell at your spouse or you yell at your kids or you're mad at the neighbor for doing something. Everything aggravates you after you're already angry. You look for reasons to be more angry, and that's why your anger is a liar. But it is getting almost out of hand these days because, frankly, we have lies going around about mask wearing. And on Facebook, there's a discredited doctor who said the masks don't work because they don't stop the virus from going in, right? But the masks are dangerous because they stop carbon dioxide from going out. Except a carbon dioxide molecule is 1,000 times smaller than a virus. So how could the virus get in and the carbon dioxide can't get out? That doesn't even make one bit of sense. But we're so angry, we don't care. So we believe all these angry things. And it's got so bad that things like QAnon are on the rise. I mean, just about every political demonstration has someone carrying a QAnon or Q flag and banner. And this is really important to understand because you may have heard it. I mean, it's a conspiracy theory that Tom Hanks and Hillary Clinton and all the liberal and elite Hollywood status people are terrorizing and sexually abusing children so that they can reap some sort of hormone from them that keeps them young and fit. Do you realize that this is exactly the same story that was told about Jews in World War II? The fake protocols of the elders of Zion was created in order to make Jews look evil. And this is the same sort of stuff that's being spread around. And we're buying into it because we're angry. And the reason why we're angry and we're buying into this is because we're depressed and we feel hopeless and we feel lonely. But mostly it's because we don't have a community like we had before. We've we're in isolation and we don't have those neighbors to say, wait, what? Where did you read that? And challenging us. So we pile not just on the internet to watch TV and binge watch any kind of show, but we surf the internet and read all of these things and get afraid and angry about what's going on. And it's because we've lost a sense of community. But just for the record, this is not new. And this was not caused by the pandemic. We started doing this to ourselves in the 50s when we built subdivisions. Yeah, they're not all ugly. Some of them look like that, which I think is still kind of ugly. But the idea behind what happened was that we started off with downtowns that were robust and energetic for years, for generations. People lived on the second floor above these businesses. And so there were vehicles on Main Street, there were people on Main Street, and more businesses came down because it was the place for socialization, and those businesses were profitable and strong. And then we invented these subdivisions in the 50s and propagated them extensively through the 80s and 90s, and everyone moved out to the suburbs. So when they left work at 5, they went out to their suburban home. And when it came supper time, they said, "Oh, I don't want to drive back in to go for supper." So they didn't. And then all those restaurants on Main Street lost a significant part of their business, and so they closed. And then there was no place to go for lunch or breakfast on Main Street because the restaurants closed, and there was no place for socialization. So now people go downtown, buy their stuff, and leave. And it doesn't matter what community we're in. It's sad to see how little traffic there is. Not just, there's traffic of people stopping and buying stuff, but there's not traffic about people socializing. And that's what we used to have. And so we've been undermining the success of our communities for multiple generations. And so we still have a lot of beautiful main streets with incredible potential, but they're not utilized to the same way they are. Yet communities that are turning those main streets and those downtown cores into social spaces again are seeing a resurgence. And I'll talk about it a bit more. But what we're winding up with is these beautiful vacant main streets. And how long can a main street be vacant and look like this before it starts to look like this? Because businesses close and they get neglected, and then we die. And that's what's happening to our community. And it's not the pandemic that has caused it. The pandemic has just made us more consciously aware of it, because now we're frogs in boiling water instead of just slowly heating up. And you know what? So for 10 years, our research has shown that, and it's not just younger people like millennials and the Generation Z. There you go, Heather. Not Generation Z. It's not just them, but semi-retirees and everyone in between that are moving out of San Francisco and moving out of Toronto and moving out of Calgary. And they're moving to places like Boise, Idaho, one of the fastest growing places in the United States still. And when Heather and I were down there to do some research in Boise, what a beautiful place. I mean, they had pubs. We sat on a rooftop pub and had a drink. They have restaurants, they had live music, they had trees, they had aesthetics. And there were people just walking around and socializing there. They a place like Zionsville, Indiana, that is attracting people of all ages, because it started off actually, or its surge came during the pandemic when it was a safe place because they had no options for the longest period of time. But it was growing already as people want in a neighborhood, in a community, not in a subdivision, not in a housing product, but in a community. And Zionsville, Indiana sort of has seen a resurgence, and it's actually not sure how it's going to handle the growth since people are moving out. You've got places like Waterloo, where people are moving out of Toronto. In fact, I don't know if you've seen some of the recent articles out of Toronto. Young people are realizing they don't need to live beside downtown in the core office space that they once had. They can live anywhere because most of their jobs can be done remotely, and they were forced to do them remotely. But now, instead of living in an expensive one-bedroom apartment in the downtown core in Toronto, they're moving to Waterloo, where after work or even over lunch, they can walk around in places that look like this. Again, the pandemic has accelerated it, but these changes and transitions have been going on for over a decade, and it's steadily growing. It's just been accelerated by the pandemic. And so you've got examples of communities that have already taken advantage of this. Williston, North Dakota. This is it. They decided they needed to do something for their main street. I mean, it is Williston, North Dakota. It's not a huge center, but it is not even surrounded by a huge center they could take advantage of. So they redid their main streets. They widened the sidewalks. They planted more trees. Heather and I were there. They put pianos on street corners where they had young people come down and play. They were put beside pubs and coffee shops so that people would hang out. And they were interestingly decorated and painted. They had food trucks and live music, and they're doing things like that to rejuvenate. They've had some new businesses, particularly the one called Grace and Glam that opened up that has done remarkably well, and not from selling locally, but selling primarily online on Instagram. But because of the atmosphere on Main Street, it's changed everything. And in fact, they had a business a developer from Chicago come and build this building that you're looking at now. There's a 5-story building. The first floor is commercial space. The second floor is shared office space. The third, fourth, and fifth floors are, or third and fourth floors are residential. And they're 1, 2, and 3 bedroom apartments and condos. And when they built it, when they were building it, when they announced it, it was sold out before they turned a single bit of dirt. And they're talking about building a second one now because it was sold out so quickly, and because of the changes that have been happening to Main Street. You've got Lancaster, Pennsylvania, which is a community. I mean, it's in the Rust Belt. They lost their steel industry, they lost their coal industry, they lost all their young people because there were no jobs, so they moved away. So Lancaster, Pennsylvania said to themselves, what are we going to do? And they said, well, let's focus on the people who are here, which was primarily semi-retirees. And they focused on enhancing their quality of life. They created more recreation spaces for them, more social spaces for them, had open air markets. They even, instead of bike pass, introduced golf cart pass to go from neighborhood to neighborhood and golf course to golf course. And now they didn't market or advertise it. They just focused on those seniors. And those seniors will go away in the winter because it's cold in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And they go to Arizona and to California and to Florida and tell other seniors, we live in such a great community. They're doing things to make our lives better. And those seniors would say, well, let's go pay it a visit. This is a great place to live. And they've had an influx of seniors population. And now if you want to build seniors housing, go to Lancaster, Pennsylvania, because you can see just about every type of development that exists for semi-retirees and their housing styles. And even though they had people complain and say, well, you don't care about young people anymore, they had to start somewhere. And now they have the most robust young professionals association in the entire Rust Belt, because young people move back to open those businesses because of the new developments and the population growth. You have Benson, Minnesota, which is one of my personal favorites. And I owe my learnings to this to Heather. Benson is about 4,000 people. They had millions of dollars to loan to local businesses, a lot of money to invest. They were giving $700,000, I think it was, to the golf course to subsidize its operations. They gave a $10,000 loan to a Mexican restaurant that had flooding in the basement, said, hey, if you stay open for a few years, you don't have to pay it back. So they did. And still they have manufacturing industry there, and they can't, those industries can't grow because they can't hire enough people. And no matter what they did, they couldn't seem to attract new people to the community. And it's a beautiful community with quality housing and everything you'd want. So we went in, they asked us to do an analysis, and it's Heather that saw it. We interviewed everyone that we could in the matter of a couple of days and told them at the end, your problem, we've heard from many different groups of many different ages, is that there's no daycare here. And I know that sounds strange. That's not an economic development initiative. In fact, they told us that. They said, that's not economic development. You're free to leave anytime you want. So we left. And after a few months, they went back to the new school they were building and said, could we build a daycare in there? And instead of, if you worked at the grocery store, I think you got $14 an hour, but if you worked at the daycare, you got $7.50. So they started subsidizing the wages and gave them proper training and said, if you live in Benson, you can get a childcare space, not a subsidized cheap one, a quality one, but you'll have one if you want. And they have new developers showing up since they built the school. I just talked to the guy who owns the newspaper there, and he said it's amazing how much economic development has happened. And in fact, last year when I spoke in Vegas to all of the state representatives about economic development and community building, the representative from Minnesota stood up and said, because of the recommendations that Heather and Doug made that added daycare to that community and the success it has garnered, the state of Minnesota is now considering childcare as an economic development, part of economic development. And we've seen it. I mean, as soon as a daycare closes now in this pandemic, there's no other childcare options. So when that daycare closes, everyone who's dropped their kids off at school has to leave work, go back, and it impacts our economy. Daycare is fundamental to our economy. So, and here's You've got Innisfail, Ontario, which is a great example of a community that's taking advantage of a new transportation hub. And they're going to be building 1, 2, and 3 bedroom condo style developments, not subdivisions and suburbs. They're integrating co-working space into their designs and developments. They're integrating agriculture into the urban setting, and they're integrating recreation. So they're going to build columns of neighborhoods rather than subdivisions. And that'd be one of those places I would be interested in seeing how it unfolds. And then you've got some place like Harriston in Ontario as well. 3 communities that each have something. They're small communities outside of Toronto, quite a ways outside of Toronto. It's not a place you just whip over to for any reason. But they focused on what they had for strengths, and they started by beautifying the doors of the businesses on Main Street, making them attractive. And then they painted and they focused on some of their assets. And all 3 of the communities have new businesses on Main Street. People that are driving to come for, one place had 2 ice cream shops, and now I think it has 4, with others opening and other new businesses. And it's become a destination place. And when we did research across Canada about where people live many years ago, we asked thousands of people. And if people didn't live in their hometown and they didn't move just to the nearest adjacent city, because that was the thing to do, we asked them, if you're not one of those people and you live in a community, what made you live there? And 31%, it was the number one reason, was a tourism experience. And sometimes it was an accidental tourism experience where they stopped and said, this is a nice place and I could live here. And Harriston, those 3 communities are growing because of it. And you've got a place like Moose Jaw that is drawing people out of Regina, because if you haven't been there, I highly recommend it. They have underground tunnels where Al Capone ran moonshine across the border, and the Chinese Laundry and Chinese were 2 very powerful presentations. And I understand a 3rd tour is coming. And they're tunnels that go under the ground and under the sidewalks, under the roads. And they actually denied it for the longest time until one of the roads caved in and exposed the tunnel in the 80s. And now they've turned it into a tourist attraction. And they're leveraging that as part of their history because they have an old CPR hotel down there. And people are attracted to that community. And young tech people are moving out of Regina, moving to Moose Jaw because they can work from anywhere. In fact, one of our tech partners is based in Moose Jaw. And the community is such a robust, beautiful, it's never perfect. They still have more things to do to grow the Main Street, and they're continuing to try it into their history, but they're doing some amazing things. So those are just some examples about how economic development is happening. And the most interesting part about it is that never once and in no place do these stores come into the picture. We hear people all the time say, Amazon and Wayfair and Walmart, we can't compete with them. You know what? I think, and Heather and I say this all the time, our whole team does, big is dying. We've seen department stores dying. We've seen big clothes labels die. We've seen big restaurant chains die that they're struggling. And I've heard older generations lament how Generation X and the millennials are killing those big box chains. But you know what? Even Amazon, Wayfair, and Walmart are realizing that things are changing and their business model isn't perfect. Amazon now has Amazon Go stores, small corner stores to sell stuff because they realize that people still want that local connection. Wayfair is opening up actual stores where you can go touch the fabrics and see the mirror, because we can buy stuff online after we've looked at it, but people still want to look at it. And if you're in a local store and you've looked at it and touched it and it's there, why not order it from there? And so Wayfair realizes their business model works on a limited capacity, but having those neighborhood stores is important. And even Walmart, this is Heather's example, and I think these are all Heather's examples, and I think they're brilliant. Walmart is moving from super centers to Walmart community stores. And that store has an open air pub on top and a restaurant inside. And they've got, the walking trails and trees and fire pits, and they're downtown communities, just the way our downtown communities looked before we built subdivisions and moved everybody out, where there was social space. So I don't know why we're letting Walmart capture these opportunities instead of our own communities, our economic growth opportunities. If Walmart and Wayfair and Amazon know that, we should know that too. And the reason why is because community matters more than ever. We now know we can do everything online, but community, Amazon, Wayfair, and Walmart didn't call you to say, hey, how are you feeling? Are you infected? Is your family okay? They just sent you an email and say, hey, you haven't bought garbage from us in a while. Would you buy some more stuff from us? But our neighbors cared about us. Our local businesses did. And it opens up a whole new economic opportunity for us. But we got to understand then, even what community is changing. It's these social spaces that everyone's trying to capture. So this is a good picture of a downtown with twinkle lights and greenery and open air cafes. And I don't see any vehicles. These are, well, one over on the far left, but there's more walkability and more opportunity for socialization. But our housing needs to change too. I don't know that building subdivisions is the answer to everything. It's been a formula for 40 years, but it's becoming a formula for failure. I can't tell you how many communities we've worked in, and they've said, "Well, we spent $400,000 on a new subdivision, and we're just waiting for someone to buy a lot." But people aren't buying lots because that's not where they want to live in a housing project. They want to live downtown. So having different styles of housing incorporated into our downtown environment like we used to is critically important. This is actually an architectural diagram from a firm in Saskatchewan. It's a recreation center. And if you look at it close, there's no place to park there. It's designed for autonomous vehicles to drop people off, which they're anticipating. And they want to be one of the first communities that really incorporates autonomous vehicles into their community. Now, there is parking where the trees are behind, but that's already been zoned for 1, 2, and 3 bedroom apartments and condos for developers. And it connects to that building. And I think there's a new iteration of that building because there's a brew pub, and there is a wine place, and there is a yoga studio, and there's a coffee shop, all sorts of stuff in there. And so people, because it gets cold where this is built, so they want to be integrated. I've said for ages that education is moving more and more online. If the pandemic's taught us anything, most of our kids have gone to school online, and they did okay. Some of them did really well, some of them didn't, but it is driving a change. Both my kids did better in school, and have realized I can go live wherever I want and go to university anywhere in the world and still live in that same community, which opens up a whole new world for them. This is an actual doctor that diagnoses patients. Now, I think it's cute. And it's interesting because this robot doctor does diagnoses thousands of times more accurately than any other doctor does. And the reason why, I mean, you've all been to the doctor and told them what's wrong, and they go online to WebMD to type it in and say, just give me a second. Or they open that big book and say, let me look this up, because they can't possibly remember everything. And so they do their best. But this doctor has all of it stored and algorithms that help diagnose, which makes it so much more accurate. Now, I asked my mother-in-law, because my wife's parents live with us. I'm a hell of a good son-in-law. I asked her, what do you think of this? And she said, no, son, I need to go see the doctor. I need to see his eyes, a person. And I asked my kids, and they said, that'd be cool, Dad. I'd go in a heartbeat. Can we go see him now? Just to see it operate. So these sort of things are going to become more and more natural. Education, healthcare, housing, our socialization on Main Street, our recreation are all transitioning, and even transportation. I mean, in this province alone, in Alberta right now, the province is going to be giving, if they haven't yet already, I haven't checked, to Calgary and Edmonton, a total of $10 billion so they can each build one a new C train line and one an LRT line. That's permanent tracks that are down. And we've heard in Edmonton how well that's worked. This is in China. And this train was only announced a year ago, and it's in operation all over. And you see those dotted white lines? The train follows those lines and doesn't deviate any more than 1 millimeter at any time. And it's brilliant because they paint over them and they move them somewhere else, and they can move the train. It's not massive investments in infrastructure that they can't get out of. They're designing their communities for change and transition. And yet we're still stuck in the same old mindset about how things are going to develop. And that means values are even changing. I mean, young people don't give a damn about titles. They're used to working in flat online environments. So if you say I'm the mayor or I'm the CAO, no offense to you guys, or you say I'm the president or I'm the vice president or I'm the executive vice president of operations, they'll shrug because they're used to working in an online environment where titles don't matter, ideas matter. And so they don't care what sort of power trip you might be on. They want action. We worked in a community. It was so frustrating. They said they wanted a new curling rink. Now, they told me 30 years ago they had 60 teams showing up for curling. Now they only have 6. That's the same 6 teams, and that's all who curls there. And they can't afford the power bills on the curling rink anymore, but they need a new one because the other one's going to collapse. So why would you do that if no one's curling anymore? And they said, well, we want a curling rink. So we did a survey in the community, and it came back that the #1 thing they were hoping to have in the community was a yoga studio, but they still decided to build a curling rink, and it cost a fortune, and it's underutilized. But it wasn't about the rest of the community. It was about them. That they want brew pubs and they want coffee studios. I mean, Starbucks sold 200 stores in Canada and 200 in the United States last year. Not because they're not profitable, but because they used to be this brilliant third space between work and home, and it was aesthetically pleasing. But now they have to compete with places like this that are locally owned, that are really aesthetic, pleasing and eclectic in nature, and they know they can't do it, so they're trying to figure out how they're going to reinvent themselves. So they're re-solidifying, building some resources so they can try an interesting new relaunch. And they, of course, are connected to their food. So please, whatever you do, don't think of Innisfail as ending at the town limits. Most people in the next generations are connected to their food, and they want some of that organic, locally grown food, which means the county, the town, the agricultural areas have to be integrated into what you're doing in the community. It's such a critical component. They want co-working space, and this is no joke. I mean, all of this stuff working from home these days has demonstrated to everyone that we can do a lot of work from home. And in fact, all the research has shown that productivity has gone up when we're working from home, except creativity and team building have gone down, which means a lot of businesses have decided they're not going to go back to that permanent workspace. Instead, they're going to be looking for a place they can rent for a day and gather people. A beautiful place like this that is creative, where they can get those creative juices flowing and do team building. And then the other 3 or 4 days a week, 3 or 4 days a week, put them back into a home work environment where they mostly want to be and keep the productivity. And this is permanent. The biggest challenge most urban centers are going to have is 30% vacancy for the next 20 years on a lot of their space if they don't convert it to something else besides office space. And of course, they want diversity. They want diverse foods, they want diverse cultures, they want diverse languages, and they want a network that supports them and those groups. They're not, they spend so much time online, they're used to diversity, and they want to be in a community that has it. And if you're worried about homogeneity, what you should be worried about is how homogeneity may hold you back. People want a lot of that diversity. And so in the end, all this means that economic development equals community building. It used to be that the lowest taxes and the least number of regulations, communities that could wrangle those would be successful, because then businesses and industries would locate, because that's what they were looking for, was low taxes and low regulations. And so people then moved to those communities with low taxes and low regulations, because the industry moved there and that's where the jobs were. Except the world has changed. Now people have realized how much they can work online. And so they move to communities where they want to live, that create social spaces that are aesthetically pleasing, that give them some connection to the people in their community. And when they pick those communities they want to live in, they are not the ones with the lowest taxes and the least regulations. Because you can't build great communities by lowering your taxes and lowering your regulations. I mean, I agree. There's not a jurisdiction in the world that has ever taxed themselves into prosperity. But there has never been a jurisdiction that has reduced taxes and regulations and found prosperity out of that either. It's about balance. And in this case now, in the way the world is changing, it's about building a whole community. So people are moving to the communities they want to live in that offer quality of life. And now businesses and industry and jobs are moving to those communities, primarily because they know that their employees want to live there and they offer a good quality of life. And that's the biggest challenge we have in most rural communities. Even if you tried to attract an industry that employed 200 people, there aren't that many people unemployed in rural communities in rural Alberta looking for a job. When you don't have a job, you move somewhere else to get it. So you need to grow a community to attract more people, to build up a labor force that you can use to attract more industry. So economic development has to be, and always will be now, about community building. And then you need to make sure you send the right message. Remember how people, the next generation, don't care about how much, what authority you have and what your title is. Instagram's an interesting and powerful force. There's a young guy who went to a town council, went to the CAO and said, I want to clean up this park. And the CAO said, well, let me take it to council. So he waited a bit and they went to council, and council said, do we have insurance? So they had to wait another few weeks to find out if they had insurance, and they didn't have insurance for it. So then they had to debate if they were going to get insurance. And then they had to debate if they're going to set a budget aside to help support cleaning like that. And then they had to have a public notification that the cleaning was going to happen. And then they had to invite the public to come and clean. And when they laid out and said, all of this may take 6 months, maybe 8 months, and we'll get it done for you, and then you could do it, he shrugged his shoulders and went and did it anyway that day. He said, are you kidding? Forget it. He took pictures of the park before it was clean, pictures of the garbage after it was done, and then pictures of the clean park, and put them on Instagram and said, clean, I think his hashtag was clean my community or clean up my community. And it went viral. Thousands and thousands of young people around North America did the same thing. So I have councils all the time and people who say, how are we going to be effective going forward? I tell them, your bigger question is, how are you going to be relevant? You need to be responsive. And then utilizing Instagram is always about telling the story like that young man did. And pictures are worth 1,000 words. Every one of these pictures, and I have 1,000 more, give you an impression and tell you a story about the community and what it values and what it's becoming. And it gives you a sense of what it's like to live there. That's what you need to do. And then market these things directly to the people who would say, I want to live there, instead of the whole world. And of course, the last big thing about being successful is making sure that your council, your administration are working hand in glove, which they do. Innisfail is very fortunate to have a very progressive council with some very great ideas. But it also has one of the best administrations we have ever had the pleasure of working for. It's very visionary, and sees what needs to come. And both council and both administration have said they want to be action oriented. No, just big plans that take up space on a shelf. We want actions. But it also isn't more than them. It needs the chamber working, the volunteer working, the business association. Every single group has to be working in the same direction, or you won't be effective, because there will be 100 other communities working together that will be attracting people, and you'll get lost in the shuffle if you can't work together. And the biggest challenge, like every other community has, are people who don't like the change that's coming, but it's coming anyway. They're the NIMBYs, not in my backyard. Everyone's heard of those. There are the bananas, build absolutely nothing anywhere near anything. There are the nopes, not on planet Earth. There are the cave people, which are citizens against virtually everything. Now, these four groups, well, they're all different. I can describe each one to you, but I know Heather's looking at me like we don't have enough time for that, so wrap this up. But they're all different. But the thing they have in common is that every single one of them will tell you why they're opposed to doing something. And they have what they think is a very legitimate reason for that. The last group is the most dangerous, and they are the fears. Fire up everyone against reasonable solutions. And the reason why they're dangerous is because they're not happy telling you why they're opposed. They have to make sure everyone else is also opposed to whatever's presented, because they're scared of change. And they make everyone else afraid by spreading fear. They tell stories and half-truths about devastating things like QAnon, like vaccinations that are dangerous. I mean, I still get upset about vaccinations. I mean, it was started by a defunct doctor that had his license revoked because he openly fudged the data. And the other champion was I can't remember her name now. She was a Playboy playmate. I understood why she supported his ideas, because her son was born with autism and she was scared and looking for a reason, but it's not right and it's not justified. Yet we are faced now in a social media world where fear is spreading ahead of facts, and people are ignoring facts because fear is easier to grab onto. And when you let those five groups, the Luddites and the resistors, stop change from happening, then you won't adapt, and your community will suffer tremendously. Now, everyone says that the pandemic is changing the world. I think what I've been showing you is that all of these changes have been inevitable. They've been coming anyway. The challenge is that they're coming at us faster now because of the pandemic than they ever have before. And they create challenges, but they create amazing new opportunities. We can do anything online, which I know people go and shop online, but this also means we can sell online to the rest of the world. For every challenge, there is an equal and opposite opportunity we need to capitalize on. But the best thing that these changes over the last decade and the pandemic have done have reminded us that community is the single most important thing on earth, and that from semi-retirees down through baby boomers and Generation X like myself and millennials and and the I generation or Generation Z, they all want to belong to communities now. They're looking for them. When the pandemic hit, they ran to them for safety. Cities are now building 15-minute neighborhoods because they know neighborhoods and communities are safer than subdivisions and housing projects. You guys have everything you need, and your council and your administration have probably done more in the last 5 or 10 years than I've seen any community do, which made this exciting for us because we didn't have to start at square one. We just had to make some recommendations on the continued direction that's going, with a few innovations that are tailored to the new adaptions. And I think you guys have an amazing future. And I am really excited about having Innisfail on one of these slides the next time I go to another community to talk to them about the things that you guys have done to secure your own prosperity. And with that, Heather, I will now be quiet.
You make me sound so mean.
No, I just know I talk too much.
Yeah, I have anxiety. I'm like, oh, I gotta keep moving on. Okay, awesome. So I think we'll just jump right over to the plan right now. So just give me 1 second. I'm just gonna share my screen. Okay, can everyone see my screen? Yes, okay, perfect. Okay, so like Doug said, life is changing. So to kick it off, let's hear from some of your friends.
Well, welcome everyone. Mayor Jim here. I think I mainly wanted to welcome everybody, the community in large, to get involved in this program we've adopted with 13 ways to fill some gaps and go in the right direction of economic development and ways to spur on our community and keep it moving in the right direction.
Hi there, my name is Todd Becker. I'm the Town of Innisfail's Chief Administrative Officer. Thank you for your participation as we unveil the town's new Economic Development Plan. Your feedback is very important as we roll this plan. This plan is a living document, which means we'll be engaging community back as the elements, the environment changes as we proceed, advancing to the tactical components of the plan. Working with you and the community is very important as we move forward. And once again, thank you for your participation.
It's been a big job, but 13 Ways has done a wonderful job. And now we're at the stage where we're going to include you, the community. So please, I encourage you to participate and look forward to working with the community on this project. Thank you.
Good job, Todd and Stuart, or Todd and our mayor. Okay, whoops, sorry. Let me go to the next slide here. Okay, so Doug, if you wanted to go through some of these values that we were able to articulate this year with council and administration.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. You'll note from these values, they're not typical. Most communities that we work with, and if you look at their strategic plan, their economic plan, their values are things like integrity, public consultation. And I never understood why they say that. My grandpa always said, if someone has to look at you and say, I'm not a liar, they're lying to you. I mean, people who don't lie don't have to tell everybody they're a liar. People who are stable geniuses don't have to tell everybody over and over again they're a stable genius. It just, you don't need to say those sorts of things. What this is what you value most. So what you're going to focus on and where the municipality and the community are going to strategically invest their dollars. You have to pick something you value over other things. If you value everything, you value nothing. So you need to pick, and it took a lot of work, and we had a lot of debates and discussions, and they were great discussions about the values that Innisfail was going to hold and the municipality was going to hold in its decision making. And these were the 5. Beauty, because being an attractive place from the highway entrance through downtown and every corner of the community is something that demonstrates and symbolizes the community's pride in itself and that it believes it has a successful future. So that's critically important. Service, it was the elected officials, administration, all took a great deal of pride in the services that were already being offered. And so they wanted to make sure that service quality, whether it's matching the current service delivery, meeting new expectations or exceeding those, they wanted to make sure that service delivery stayed front and center in the values they hold dear. Economics, developing entrepreneurs through small business growth opportunities was very important. And I need to emphasize, the idea was small business opportunities, because the big box stores can come and they wind up killing a lot of small businesses. And you already have Red Deer full of big box stores to the north. I think what you'll find is that you could have a lot of people coming to Innisfail for the local mom and pops, for the brew pubs, for the walkability, and don't compete against Red Deer. Find something that makes you unique. So developing entrepreneurs through small business opportunities was a critical value. The heart, the destination of the downtown with vibrant events and activities was incredibly important, because it showcases and brings people downtown, showcases the community. And then of course, connecting individuals, neighborhoods in a timeless community feel. And that is incredibly important, whether it's the walking trails that connect communities and neighborhoods, or whether it's events that bridge those gaps. Council and administration realize that breaking down barriers and helping to build those connections is incredibly important for building a fully inclusive community where everyone feels like they belong.
Going.
Yes. So the mission, this is the mission for the municipal corporation. Many of them have, well, I have countless examples of horrible mission statements because they're too long, they're too verbose, and like I am, and they're not really specific. So the mission for this council and for the administration, for the municipal corporation, this again took a lot of work to narrow it down, because it takes more work to get it precise than it does to just go on and on and on. Creating an inclusive, entrepreneurial, and beautiful community with a connection to the region and to each other. And finally, the vision. I'm sure you've never heard me say this before, but we actually did research across Canada on vision statements and slogans for communities, and we stopped halfway across the country, a third of the way across the country, because 54% of them had the best place to work, live, and raise a family, which doesn't say anything and doesn't mean anything, and most of the time it's a lie anyway. This vision is very unique, and it says pride in our community's diversity, beauty, and economic opportunity. That's the vision of the community, that members take pride in the diversity, beauty, and economic opportunity. So again, it's specific, but if you don't focus on what your vision is going to be and you try and do everything, you'll wind up doing nothing. So I'm very excited about the values and the mission and the vision that this council and administration put together. Economic development. I just want to emphasize, I did talk about how economic development isn't just about the lowest taxes anymore. Emphasize that a lot already. Economic development is about community building, and Heather has a fascinating stat that's very important to understand. And we say this to all communities who are sitting there waiting for some developer to come along and build something for them. If they do that, that might not coalesce with what the community is trying to be or where its strengths are. And so you wind up taking whatever comes to you. And instead, you need to decide what you want to be and then go get those businesses and those industries. And interestingly enough, when you decide what you want to be, the first initiative municipalities undertake is to invest themselves in their own community, whether it's Main Street initiatives or more parks or recreation or walking trails or whatever it is, housing, they wind up being the first investors. And that is what draws in other investment. And I go back to Williston, North Dakota, where there's no way that a developer from Chicago would have come out and built that building and be building a second building if it wasn't for Williston's investment in what they want it to be. And so whatever you invest in the public, I know people are always saying, oh, they're spending too much money, except Heather, what's the stat that you have?
3 to 1.
3 to 1. So for every dollar the public government, the local government spends in investing in their community, you get a 3 to 1 ratio investment of private sector investment that goes along with it. So if the municipality invests nothing, you get nothing. If you invest $1, you get 3. That's the running average from the research. So I mean, it's worthwhile. And if you're not going to invest in your community, who is?
Okay, so great segue. So this is the plan. This is a plan on a page, and like Doug said, the economy of words is actually quite tricky. So in normal times, so not COVID, we would be able to share these around. There's a little bit of the values and the mission on the back, and then the plan here on one page. So we still will get these out to the to you guys, but just in our digital virtual world, this is what we're going to be able to have. And I do believe the plan is the full plan is actually on the website for review. Is that right? Remember seeing it? Yeah. Okay, perfect. So we're just going to go over some high level tidbits. So in general, the project goals, and we have been working on this. We were first, I guess, asked to come to the community on November 28th, 2019. And then I think we really kicked this off back in probably May would be the real kickoff date. So the project goals were promoting, fostering, and facilitating a vibrant and successful local business environment, discovering, harnessing, and leveraging the community's unique strengths and advantages, and supporting an entrepreneurial spirit that will enhance diversity and enrich the local economy. So there's a few action points that we're going to go through because when we were connecting with council and the various stakeholders and residents, we heard loud and clear that people did not want another plan. They didn't want another plan to make a plan and so on. So we wanted to get into action. And so we're going to go through some of our recommendations that we think would be a good fit for the community and just helping Innisfail grow in its authentic and keeping in mind the character and the uniqueness that the community has. So let's go through a few of them. Sorry, my PowerPoint is really slow tonight. Okay, let's talk about the first one. So enhance Main Street as a gathering place. So twinkle lights are probably one of my favorite things. They're probably some of everybody's favorite things. And this is something that we recommend. And we do get some pushback on this because people think, oh, it's frivolous. Like, let's not do that. We could spend money on other things. But this is actually really important because the psychology around twinkle lights and lighting in general is really interesting in how it really does just equate to people wanting to spend more time. And when people spend more time somewhere, they spend more money. And so twinkle lights are not just something that we do at Christmas time. They're meant to be up all year long. And so this was one of the recommendations because you guys have awesome trees. And I know that sounds silly to celebrate awesome trees, but you wouldn't believe how many communities we work with where they don't have trees. And trees are expensive and you guys have awesome trees. So it's something that you guys have as a huge asset that can be really, I guess, shown off through twinkle lights. Another recommendation was getting creative with your seating. Doug and I were actually in Detroit a year and a half ago now, and we were walking down their new Main Street, and talk about a city that had to really rebuild itself. They had swings and it was so weird. They didn't have benches. And I said to Doug, I'm like, oh, look, there's a swing open. Let's go sit. And I can promise you in my entire life, I have never once said like, oh, look, there's a bench. Let's go sit down. Like, so this is just another cool example of bringing socialization. And the point around socialization is that is how Main Streets and businesses thrive. People think before it was the business that was there and then that brought people down. And that's how the dynamic has worked. And it actually has been historically the opposite. Socialization happened and then the businesses came to support and take advantage of that. So really doing what we can to enhance the Main Street as a gathering place is really important for not just the heartbeat of the community, but also profitability for the businesses in that core district. And signage. Signage is really important. I'm not saying unified signage necessarily, but just clear signage and blade signs. If you think of like Disneyland and Main Street, you look down it, you're going to see blade signs. And there's just something, again, about the psychology, about being able to see what's out there. It just kind of creates this busy vibe while still being beautiful. And something else that we recommended was doing a rendering. So this is obviously not Innisfail, but this is an example. And renderings are really fun because it starts to paint the picture for people, and people get excited about this, and then they get to give their opinions. And so it's really easy for us to say, oh, put up twinkle lights and, you know, put up some swings, but really having it all tie together and what's going to go where is really important. So I actually really like this rendering in particular because it's winter. We're in winter now. We're a winter community. So it's important for us to take that into consideration and not just be building for the 6 months of the year that are beautiful. Something else that's in the works. So Doug alluded to, or was speaking earlier about co-working spaces. And this is something that it's really interesting as a business model to see how it's growing throughout North America. So one of our recommendations is to have a co-working facility, and not just a co-working facility by itself, but an integrated co-working facility that is also the visitor town office, and not just something where, you know, you put some tables together and call it a day. It's meant to be beautiful and inspiring, because in the little surrounding community, I shouldn't say little, but I actually did a pretty large review of the community and the other co-working facilities, and they're not that great. So this is a huge opportunity to have something that will really draw people to your community. It's what the other thing that we're hoping to have in this this facility, or that we would recommend, is to have an office that is an economic development entity. So that's the other recommendation that we have is there's lots of communities that have a bit more of an economic development entity or a board of trade that is a little bit more tied closely to the municipality. And so this way, it's not based on memberships. It's funded through the municipality. It's potentially funded through business licenses. And so one of our recommendations is to explore that and to look at the different models and to really make sure that that economic development entity is now the advocate for the businesses on a whole, not just in a certain area, not just membership. So there's a lot of really successful models, and I think at this point the town, we've given them a whole bunch of background, a whole bunch of homework, and cool ideas. So I think the town right now is taking all that into consideration, but just wanted to let you know that was also something that we did put into the recommendations. Before I get into the last one, which I'm really excited because it's actually happening right now, Doug, do you have anything that you wanted to add to the main street in the downtown, and then the economic development entity / co-working space?
Yeah, well, we just talked about creating a plan for the downtown that moves it to the next level yet, with buildings and with spaces. And like personally, I could just say that I see a lot of office-based businesses in Red Deer that say, you know, it's expensive down here. We don't need this all week long. And they find out that Innisfail has something like this where you can spend some time down there, do some team building, do some creative work, walk down to the brew pub or a local restaurant. It's a great community to walk around. Everyone goes out for supper after because there's a great restaurant on Main Street, and it turns out there's some live music, and it's winter and it's some winter festival. Like, hey, let's just stay. And then, you know, someone has too much fun. There's a hotel downtown they can stay at. I just see how all of this sort of stuff connects and where the potential to grow is from.
Great point. And so one of our last recommendations was around marketing, and the amount of times we have heard Innisfail is the best kept secret it's hilarious. And then we were there for what, 5 minutes? And we're like, yeah, okay, it is the best kept secret. Like, we just kept driving and we stumbled upon the golf course and the brewery. It was like, oh yeah, okay, I totally get why everybody's saying that now. So there's some recommendations that we had around how the municipality is marketed internally and externally. So one of the very first things that we've done is we are looking at revamping the brand and the website and any sort of digital collateral that goes with it. So this is the current website. And so it's interesting, when we were first connecting with the town, we said, oh, like, your website's actually pretty good, because some websites are not even like at this level. And then we did a little bit of background work, and it was a bit cluttered in the back. So we were able to start to shift gears, and we're able to move to something that looks more like this. So similar to that video that you saw at the beginning of the presentation, something like that will run on a reel. So when you first log on, it's about a 19-second reel. And then the cool thing is that those images can interchange through the seasons. We did take this at the end of August, and we had some great participants from the community and some great kiddos that came out. So it was really fun. And we have some really fun images that's authentic to your community. So this is the new landing page. And I won't say specifically when it's going to be launched, but I'm going to look to Stuart and say I can say sometime in the beginning of next year.
Yeah, it's something right, Heather. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. I'll be vague, just like the vaccine rollout.
Heather, can I also, I think it's something that people need to realize is it might not look that much different, but the one on the right is much more visual. It's much more aesthetically pleasing. And if you think about people now, they don't go on Google and read a long document about how to build a shelf. They watch a video. They're looking for because we're so overloaded, they're not looking for a lot of text. They're looking for visuals that capture, and it's a subtle difference, but it's a critically important difference between the two pages.
And good point. And I think the other thing is that municipal websites are a bit tricky because you want to make sure that it is robust, and so people can access all the things as a resident that you need to use for the municipal website, while still accurately reflecting the culture and the beauty that's in your community. And so this website, we're working really hard so it does reflect what your community is, and not necessarily just meant to be a place where you can go and see when the roads are going to be plowed and things like that. So it's going to nerd out for you guys for a minute, but ultimately these are what it really means. So simplified user experience, optimized website for a search engine, cohesive imagery, better load speeds. This is huge. Like, this is the most important thing. People are impatient, so we have to make sure it's quick. Enhanced event management software and user-friendly website management tool for administration. So again, these are all things that are really important that will just allow for the website to be a little bit more robust, because it's not just a website anymore. This is the digital impression that people are going to have of your community. So this is really important. And then, like I said, there are some additional marketing tools that are coming down as well. So this is exciting. We were able to work on the brand as we were working on the plan. So it was lots of chatting with people. And I should say that part of this at the very beginning and throughout, Doug and I have done extensive amounts of resident interviews, and we really were able to talk to people and see what's working, what's not, just some really fun and honest conversations. And so this plan and these website and the brand in particular reflects the outcome of those references and those the conversations. The other thing that we took into consideration was the extensive amount of planning that had been done in years before we came into the conversation. So I know Roger Brooks was down, I think in 2017, I'm thinking, ish. And so we were able to look at, like, that's just an example. We were able to look at those plans. And so we weren't really starting from scratch. We were able to have a pretty, well, I would say a really great foundation, because again, most communities don't have the sort of planning that you guys had. So yeah, Doug, I think that's bringing me to the end of my portion. Anything you'd like to add before we turn it over for a conversation and some Q&A?
Ready to go.
Awesome. Okay, so Stuart and Todd, I'm gonna let you guys, if you guys have anything you guys would like to say before we move into Q&A, or we can just rip the Band-Aid off and see what everybody thinks.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Stuart.
Sorry, Todd. Yeah, from my perspective, no, I don't think I have anything else to add at this point. You guys gave a great overview, great perspective. Yeah, certainly interested to hear some discussion and comments. And but no, otherwise I'm good.
And to provide my perspective, I just want to thank everybody for joining in tonight to listen and then also participate in the conversation. From my perspective, and it's only my perspective only, and I told council this about a month ago, that from where I sit and in representing the community and representing and supporting council and administration, is I starting to see some of the puzzle pieces actually take shape. And what I mean by that, and I'm only saying it from where I sit, I don't run a business, but what I see within the community is a lot of cool things going on that during these difficult times, that there's a lot of cross marketing going on that you guys are doing, which is fantastic. But from what my experiences are in Innisfail and what has been done for many, many years, and then just recently and listening and working with council and their aspirations, and they made it clear that community beautification has to be a priority, economic development, um, and aesthetics. And I just want to kind of paint that picture of what's going on to integrate this whole plan. So when we talk about economic development, it's just not just the business side of it, it's an integrated approach. That's the social components, that's the economic, that's environmental. And some of the things that I've witnessed in the community is Feast on Main, the ITT, the Innisfail, the theater group, the wayfinding signage projects, the Gateway Landscaping Plan going into phase 2 in 2021, $4.6 million of capital improvements to the community on our infrastructure, which we take for granted, but it's huge investments every year. The Dodds Lake study, the such things as the skate park, the Autumn Grove development for the seniors housing, the recreation amenities planning that we're doing with sports fields included. It's just all part of this whole economic development focus, but it's integrated. And as to me, I'm starting to see how all these pieces come together, and it's exciting that this plan is coming out now. Although I'm putting some excitement in this, it's not exciting due to the conditions that we're faced with right now. But we have to look through and gain, look at as opportunity and feel what the reality is, and because we're suffering, but at the same time as we need to kind of look through that muck and consider the opportunities that's coming towards us. So that's just my general opinions right now. I'm looking forward to the questions and comments coming forward here. So thank you.
Okay. So how do we open it up for discussion, Stuart?
So I think from your end as the host at the moment, Heather, if anyone has comments, I think you'll have to do it from your side. And there's also the chat box as well as the Q&A.
Sure. Okay. Let me figure this out. So yeah, there's the chat box and the Q&A. So maybe what we'll do is who can turn on? Maybe for now, let's if we can get some questions going in the Q&A box, or we got one there. Doug, maybe I'll get you to read the chat while I try and maybe figure it out so people can talk.
I was looking at the chat. I did see one question, and I did write a summary. Did you summarize what you heard from citizens? Bill asked that. I did write a summary. It was just a couple of pages to capture the big themes from all the interviews and the focus groups we did and the people we talked to on the streets and business owners and over that time. I have detailed notes, but one of the conditions with everyone we talked to is that it was entirely off the record, so that we could see how, because people will tend to be more guarded if they think what they say is going to be presented directly. So I do have the summary, and Stuart, I think it's in the report, right?
Yeah, absolutely, Doug. It's on pages 6 and 7 of the plan.
Great. I didn't note any other questions, but I did appreciate there were lots of comments. And you're right, when you come out of the dark tunnel of COVID, people will be looking to celebrate and move forward. And it will create I think a winter event would be great. A spring event would be great. A summer event. I know somebody had asked me before when we talked about having an event, the chamber puts on a Christmas event. Not one person who we interviewed brought up the Christmas event, but everyone kept saying, we need more events downtown. We need more stuff to bring us together. They like the idea of live music and having, didn't even necessarily need to be a reason to celebrate, just the thing that would draw. I mean, you got 100,000 people in Red Deer that their communities are subdivisions, and the only business there is, a gas station. They're looking for more authentic neighborhoods to be in. And I could see you've got a huge market there that you can attract, because Innisfail has a tremendous amount to offer. And yes, when we come out of this pandemic, people are going to be desperately looking for real social experiences. And I think this perfectly situates you and primes you for that. Heather's said this, so I'm quoting her, but she has said, if your plans now, you're still planning for the pandemic, it's too late. You need to be planning for what happens when the pandemic's over, because that's only, with the vaccine and stuff, 5 or 6 months from now, when things start to return very much to normal, and people will be looking for it. So it's time to start planning for this pandemic to be over and move on with life.
Okay, I've moved everybody to panelists now. So we're a whole big group of panelists. So now everybody can talk.
Well, I have to say, one thing I'm really pleased with that I've seen in the paper is that the trains are going to stop blowing their whistle as they go through town. I think that will really add to the appeal of Innisfail. So I know I've had people visit me and say, how the hell do you put up with that train all night? So thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Jim Romaine here. Doug, are you hearing me there?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. For some reason, I was on the whole thing, but I didn't have a frame to come up on it. But I certainly enjoyed your presentation. And yeah, Bob, you're right. I think there's going to be a lot of people, but there's also people that like that train whistle, believe it or not. But
oh no. Okay, I won't. Okay,
but I don't think that's the majority. But anyways, we've had that kind of feedback. But absolutely, these are things that can contribute to business situations where you've got you've had business people that have their office close to the tracks, trying to conduct business at times, and train can be very overwhelming sometimes. But anyways, as far as the whole presentation of 13 ways, Doug, I think I'm still hoping we can do some sort of a major sale here in the spring or in the summer, but time will tell. We'll have to maybe just work together and see when we think it would be a good time. But I'm sure you're busy too, you and Heather. But anyway,
Jim, it's the reason why Heather and I only take on 3 communities a year, because we like to spend 6 or 8 months, and we don't. You'll see that one pager. A lot of consultants would have written a 50-page report and given it to you and said, "There you go." We're not like that. We want to see results, which is when you guys said we want action, not just another report. That's music to our ears. So honestly, even when we're done this project, we're only a phone call away. And I mean, we'll come down and do a public presentation. We'll do more public presentations because even with no pandemic now, and let's say 200 people showed up to a town hall, if 2,000 people showed up to a town hall, you can't say this once. You can't talk about the future of the community once. Everyone needs to be talking about it. And so for the 43 people that are on this call, I remind people all the time that what you need to do is continue to talk about this so that everyone in the community gets excited about it and starts talking about it. Because if everyone in the community is telling the exciting story about what Innisfail is becoming and its potential, that will be better than having $1 million to market your community, because you'll have everyone in the community telling two friends and they'll tell two friends. We've worked in communities where people have been incredibly negative, the whole community. And I tell them, like I literally told the person at the meeting, you've got to stop being so negative. Like, you seriously have to shut up, because every time you're negative, your neighbors are negative and everyone's negative. And when everyone in the community is negative, you know what you're telling the rest of the world? Your community sucks. And they'll believe it because you told them. But if you tell people your community is amazing and the amazing things that are going on, then they'll believe that too. So it's not, we'll do an event in the spring. We'll come and talk to other groups. If you've got people who are mad, we'll sit down and explain to them what we're doing. We're not disappearing, even though we're, technically done work, because we want to see you guys have success, because I do not want to put on a presentation that Innisfail failed, because it means we failed. And community building is too important for that. So we'll be around, Jim. You don't have to worry. We'll be there to help. And I hope everyone on this call is doing the same.
I'm so extroverted. Are you kidding? When this is over, I'm just gonna be up there like every other day. I was saying, we were working somewhere else, and I texted Stuart and I was like, oh my gosh, I really miss Innisfail. Like, it's weird how we kind of felt like we were at home. I just want to address one of the comments here. So when will the businesses and residents see an action list and a timeline for achieving the project goals to keep the momentum going? So maybe I'll throw it over to Todd for a little bit more specific, but I just wanted to highlight really quickly, on the website, there is the very in-depth plan on there. So we do have like the one pager, that's each side, but we do have this plan that goes through a whole bunch of the context, a whole bunch of the interviews, all like the really boring, so I shouldn't say boring, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I mean, like, bylaws and legislations and all that good stuff. So that way, so it all is through here. And actually on the digital one, they're all clickable resources and links. So so that's available as well. But maybe Todd, I'll throw it over to you. And I'm sorry I said boring. I didn't mean to say boring. I meant like the really important things, because they are.
Yep, that's for the conversation, the question from likely Tyrell and family, that this plan was adopted a couple of weeks ago by council. This is a live document. This is not just done, shelf, let's go. This is a live document, but this is not a town of Innisfail plan. This is a community plan. So the town is a stakeholder, the town is a facilitator. So this is not just a town of Innisfail, town administration, town council plan. And you're right, looking forward to working with businesses, with the community, and moving things forward. So right now, council has gone through their budget deliberations. We currently have some dollars in the budget administration proposed. Council will, we have a report to them for Monday. Right now, in the draft budget is some dollars associated with some dollars to build out an urban design. So that's what Doug and Heather were talking about, from lighting to events, to benches, to signage, even building out beyond Main Street. What is Main Street? What does this look like now and into the future? There's a budget being proposed for the 2021, but also some dollars associated to help build out the entity to support this ecosystem that I believe there's some gaps in it. We have a town that's facilitator, stakeholder, regulatory. We have the chamber, the business, supporting membership. But in that there's sort of some gaps that we believe that can be filled with another entity to support building out that ecosystem. So there's some dollars in there to help build on that ecosystem component. But that plan is available, as what Heather stated. And so right now, the administration is building out the 2021 tactical plans in each of our respective areas. So just 2 weeks ago, this plan adopted, hoping to ratify the budget with council on Monday, which then puts us in motion to start building out the details to this plan. So we're not going to sit on this, we're going to build it out, but we need to communicate. A lot of it is stakeholder engagements on each component of the plan. It's just not now we administration take away and go. It's involving the community as we build out. And what I like about, I know there's a representative from Olds here, and what I like about what I believe Olds has done through their Olds Institute is they mobilize their community in a lot of different ways and a lot of different efforts to build out their community over a long-term period, not just over a year, but 15, 20 years. From my vision is we need to mobilize the community to make this successful, not just a town governance approach. This is an all-in approach by the champions in the community.
That I just want to add is a very important point. This is a community-wide plan. I mean, there's stuff in there businesses can do, volunteers do, the public does. Everyone needs to own this because the municipality is only responsible for the municipal corporation, not the whole community. It takes everyone coming together to work on this. So it was a really good reminder, Todd, that everyone owns this. There's a few questions about who we talk to. We talk to seniors, we talk to young people, we talk to a few people from the county too that do most of their stuff in town, but they still live on acreages or out on a farm. We talk to people who live in town, but actually do most of their business out on farms or out on acreages. We talk to people from different demographic backgrounds from different countries, different ethnic backgrounds. We talk to people with different socioeconomic backgrounds. We talk to people with just different orientations of all type. The one group I will say we missed, we tried to meet with some teens. There was a teen organization, but some coordination fell apart and we weren't able to get it done before this happened and before the first shutdown, and it just seemed to never materialize again. So that is the one group, teens, that we didn't capture, but we captured a lot of other groups.
One of the questions here is from Leslie Ann. For the signage, how can a person's business be considered as a supplier?
Well, I can start maybe, or not to Stuart, but so basically is come on in and talk to us, but also because we're governments, we have to follow really strict procurement rules. And we have not done a good job to tell our local businesses how that works. It's bulky, it's messy. We are required to promote projects over a certain amount rate through actually Western Canada. But I think we can be better, and that's probably an action item to be part of this plan, is how do businesses, local businesses, regional businesses access projects and supplier to the town of Innisfail and local government. So we'd be happy to talk to you about how that can work. We need to do a better job in communicating what's coming with some of our projects, but we are required to promote projects out at a certain amount. But be happy to talk to businesses and how that works. So just come on in, and Stuart's the guy to chat with. We may point you to the respective management team for the particular project, but we'd be happy to have that conversation.
And another question from Leslie Ann, is there a plan for a gallery or local artisans?
Sure. And again, it has to come with a plan. Like I think if there's and I think that is very important in Innisfail, and it should be celebrated and acknowledged. So then what generates that conversation is that conversations, creating the vision. Where does that fit in the priority listing of moving the community forward? It takes a lot of conversations, but we have hundreds and hundreds of things we should be doing, but what is the priority based on capacity and dollars to make those happen? But again, we do some master planning on the priorities. But again, we also need champions to raise those conversations and bring those forth through whether it's political body or the different committees. But right now, we have not set a plan for that type of project, but it can be part of a project, but it takes a lot of coordination in establishing that vision. So again, we do have people we can have those conversations with and put it to me, but to Stuart, Megan Jenkins on the call as well, our Director of Community Services. But we have folks that are interested in having these conversations.
If I could add, I mean, I know it's a big project, but I see so much potential in the downtown core, the triangle and that area, and a need for conversations with current landowners, building owners in there to figure out what the long-term plan is. I think it'd be really cool to engage the community to talk about all the things that you would like to see in a downtown that are really appealing. And to go through and think, I mean, the first exercise we did with council that Heather ran them through was to come forward with a description of a community that they loved spending some time in and why. And so I could see this list of things downtown, like, are there murals? How many coffee shops are there? What does the coffee shop look like? Like, what's your favorite one where you go to when you go on holidays? What does the brew pub look like? Who do you think would come down and go to 3 or 4 different brew pubs? And if they do, what kind of restaurants are they looking for? Where would they like to stay? Would they stay? Because then you'll answer questions about, do you need some sort of public transfer, maybe a partnership with Uber? Do you need a building that showcases local artists, like that's connected to a museum that showcases local artists? And maybe you have several stores that are about selling local goods and local products. I mean, you start to create this big vision, and that's when you pull it all together and try and envision how these pieces connect in downtown. That's why we didn't do it. I mean, there's so many dimensions to what you can do downtown. It's another project on its own. But the idea, like that suggestion about pulling all the local artists together in a stop, there's 1,000 different ideas you can put into a master list and figure out how they connect and what the downtown could look like. And then the vision, the master list, and those vision boards that Heather talked about are what things look like 20 years from now. And then you start today to get there. Because honestly, if you wait until 20 years from now, you'll never get there. You have to start today. I said before on the last presentation, one of my favorite quotes is a Buddhist quote that says, there's only 2 times to plant a tree, 20 years ago when you should have, and today. Well, here you are. It's time to put all that together and figure out what the community is going to look like 20 years from now. And then it's a deliberate plan that draws new investment and new people, I think.
So Doug, with that, and that's the importance of that entity. Again, the town, we have our, couple of hundred services we provide to the community, and we're really good at that. And we have good public feedback when we're not so good. The public, the economic development entity is to help bridge those priorities. So the town, I would expect, would be a participant with that entity, but not the driver, not the legislator, not the, the kingpin of the committee. It's a participant with the community. But as per the artists and the importance of that to our economics and our social well-being, to build that out would be based on a priority likely established through that entity. Once that's developed, what is the priority? Where should the resources be going? And let's go, because we can't do everything. We need to have a strategic focus to making sure we're all moving with the arrows going in the right same way, not crossing over, because it is very inefficient, chaotic, and damaging once those arrows are crossing over. So it's a focus.
Exactly.
That actually might be a good segue to the point about the Muse, and Councillor Barkley just said this in the chat box. So a lot of private companies and communities in general will, exactly to Todd's point, you can't be everything for everyone. So when you're making a strategic plan, you try and simplify it, and you try and pick a fictitious being, and you make decisions based on that fictitious being. So I won't go into the details too much, but we were able, based on our research, to create these fictitious beings. We did a few, 3 that speak to the various people in your community, and also the people you guys would really like to attract to your community. And so it was that way when you're making decisions for events or beautification initiatives, education planning, you can't possibly think of every single person in your community when you're making decisions. So you want to come up with somebody who's going to really represent so many of your residents. And so my own personal example, when I was working with Lululemon, we were developing the brand muse, and her name was Ocean, and she was 5'10". She weighed, I can't even remember, like something like 140 pounds, something crazy. And we knew exactly how much money she made. We knew all these things about her, but she was fictitious. And so the reason why we had her was that she could identify with the ladies who were senior citizens, and then also the 17-year-olds. So anytime Lululemon had to make a decision on something, they would think to what she would want. And that was a helpful guidance for them when they were trying to figure out really what their brand was. And so I'm sure if you want to see those muses, Stuart has them all written out, and we put them in the brand guide. So it was fun to think about those people. But like I said, we did our research, and we took many aspects from the interviews that we did have to put them into these fictitious beings. Oh, sorry. Emmett, go away.
Are you done, Heather? Sorry, I just wanted to ask something.
Yeah, I'm going to turn off my camera. Please, yes, take over.
I guess this is for Doug and Todd. I don't know, I haven't seen the report, but when we're talking gap analysis on economic development and the shared workspace with what we're missing currently in the community, is that available to the public, or is that, because I didn't see that in the plan or anything. The plan is more just the action items going forward. So it's kind of, I'm just interested to see where Doug and Heather's kind of analysis shows the gaps in that within the town's plan, the community's plan, all that stuff.
That's a good question, Tyrell, and even on to Stuart. So prior to understanding of having a more of a definite focus with ECDev, the town did a gap analysis a couple of years ago. I'd say, Stuart, I can't remember the date, but so with that, we looked at our current location. Of course, there was indication of leakage to Olds and to Red Deer. Stop chasing Walmart and Work Warehouse, all those types of entities, and started building the niche, Darkwoods, Field and Forge, Coffee Cottage, Gift Loft, and so keep building that momentum to make it attractive for those niche markets to be attractive to Innisfail. And Stuart, you're more ingrained with that plan, and it's really important to kind of share your perspective of what we saw in that plan. But we have not built those action plans, Tyrell, regarding that gap analysis, just due to circumstance. But Stuart, I'll just put it over to you to comment.
Yeah, most definitely, Tyrell. So the retail gap analysis we completed about, probably just over a year ago, sort of leading into our work with Doug and Heather. As Todd sort of alluded to, quite valuable findings. Generally speaking, it was recommended in that report that we don't necessarily try to compete with some of our neighboring communities, such as Red Deer and Olds was identified as well, but rather sort of, again, build up our own unique value proposition, which that report definitely suggests as making use of and leveraging some of the unique qualities we've got around agriculture, sort of brew pubs, restaurants, coffee shops and whatnot, giving folks a reason to travel from those outlying communities into to Innisfail. So again, that very much, I think, provided a good basis for what Doug and Heather have put together for us. I think this plan now definitely builds upon that.
Yeah, I remember, Stuart, I think you shared that with the Chamber of Commerce, that gap analysis on the businesses in the town and kind of what we want to do. But I mean, the gap analysis, what I'm wondering is with the 13 ways, it seems like we're looking for this board of trade that's filling a gap between the town and the chamber currently. So it's not necessarily the gap analysis on what businesses, I think the one that you're talking about that was done years ago, Stuart, I think it's a decision that's been made in this investigation of 13 ways of what, I guess, why that, I'm wondering why that is one of the items that we want to do, like what that analysis is versus what the town isn't doing already and what the chamber isn't doing, and what, I don't know if there's any other organizations. I know there was another organization in town that was more about the tourism.
Yeah.
So with all of those working together, the town, the tourism, the Chamber of Commerce, like where the gaps are that we need the Board of Trade, I guess, as far as a paid position through the town.
Yeah, for sure. Good question, Tyrell. And I think, and Heather, correct me if I'm wrong from your understanding, but the economic development entity item in the plan, I think that more comes from the lack of capacity that the community has in being able to achieve some of its goals in economic development at the moment. So I think the retail gap analysis is more some of that foundational work towards identifying, what might create a solid retail mix to align with the vision of council and the community. I think the entity piece of it, and again, Heather might be able to provide a bit more insight, but that would be more looking at what are some of the services that we would like to offer within the community to support business, whether it's business incubation, business coaching, marketing support, finance, lending, that kind of stuff. What do we have within the community at the moment, and what's missing? So I think a lot of those things that I just mentioned, we don't necessarily have in the community. There are service providers in Red Deer and throughout the area. But again, I think what I believe has been heard is that the expectation or the goals for economic development are up here. I think the ability to achieve them is just not quite in alignment at the moment. So
right.
I think
yeah, and I totally agree with you there, Stuart, and that we're missing probably a lot of what you're talking about there. I guess my question is are those things in a report that we can see of what through 13 ways or through the negotiations between Heather and Doug and the town, where we want to be as it's been decided, right? Like you said, here's where we want to be, here's where we are, we got to get there, right? Is a report saying that kind of what we're missing so we can come up with potentially other ideas or different ways of meeting those needs?
Could I jump in? Is that okay?
Yeah, of course, Doug.
So it's tough to explain this. There isn't a report that says what you need, because we found a lot of companies go in and do a gap analysis, and they look around town and they go, you need a grocery store, you need a place to get a haircut, and they list the businesses so you have one of each. Like that's an old way of thinking. Mm-hmm. And it's the economies of scale that can help you grow. So I mean, off the top of my head, I would say one of the gaps you have is that you should be, and I could even tell you some of the locations I think they should go, although that was beyond the scope of what we were doing. You should have 3 more brew pubs. And then that should turn into some sort of marketing to the 100,000 people that are in Red Deer that have to drive everywhere they go, would love to walk down a quaint street in an authentic place and be able to experience that without the kind of place they would want to go to on holidays, but it's just down the road. Now, the challenge, and I don't mean this to be offensive to the current Chamber of Commerce, because I'm not saying that that's exactly what they do, but typically chambers of commerce collect membership dues so that they can hire someone to put on an event, and the event raises enough funds that they can continue to pay someone to collect membership dues and put on an event, and round and round and round we go. And the only time there's much conversation between the municipality and the chamber is when taxes are too high and regulations are too steep. And yet, if you're going to go deliberately plan, what you have for vacant lots and what landowners are going to do with buildings, like maybe it's the mall, maybe it's the school building, maybe it's the Legion, and what the future is 20 years from now, and redesigning those spaces and how they can look, requires some really more aggressive and more robust economic development. And it's a challenge when the town is dealing with all the day-to-day issues. So our recommendation to most communities is that chambers of commerce have the chance to evolve. And I don't know if it's the chambers that take it over. It's some sort of hybrid that balances between a chamber and the local businesses and the Business Development Association and downtown and the town, that can put some business perspective in the challenges they're facing, and not just do a gap analysis that says we need one of each of these 20 businesses. Instead says, this is how we're going to attract, 5,000 people every weekend downtown with these sort of businesses. And then works with the land and works with developers and works with current business owners to do that. It's really hard to say what those gaps are. But you've reached the first stage where you've clearly defined what Innisfail can do, that quality of life, the downtown core. I mean, I could make you a list, but the public needs to be engaged about that more. There's a lot of conversations that need to go on with people who own the Legion and the school and the mall, and to figure out how this all fits together. So it's like the next phase. But I completely understand. That's why we recommended some sort of entity that. And it's not that the chamber is not effective, and it's not that the town isn't effective. It's a new way of doing community and business growth that requires a new entity. So,
yeah, and I think I'm partially in agreement with you there, Doug. Like, I don't take offense. I'm just became the president of the Chamber of Commerce here in town, so this is why I'm bringing up these questions partially, and a business owner in town, but. I want to see the chamber evolve and become more progressive in going forward with these kind of plans and helping shape the businesses in the community. And why be a chamber member? Why do business in Innisfail? It should be the same answer, right?
Yeah.
You want to do both. It's not just about collecting revenues so you can put on events. Everything's got to go hand in hand.
Yeah.
So I guess that was my question, is why, in your opinion, and I totally agree. I think chambers probably in the past, like any organization, have become potentially stale or have done what they've always done, right? Rather than kind of change and evolve to make things better. So I guess that was more of my question, Doug, was if there were specific things that as a chamber we could evolve with the town to make this plan for our community work better.
Definitely. And no, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, chamber definitely has a role, and when I think, and I'm just part of the conversation. I don't want to, be offensive as well. But I look at such things as a library. Library has evolved. They've adjusted their service delivery model. This is a new model, I think, is occurring in other communities, but they're highly successful. I didn't bring them up, but what they delivered to council during the budget presentation was truly amazing. What they're doing within that facility into the community. That could be any entity. The town also needs to be forward thinking and not just work with what we had in the past. We just need to keep going. And the entity piece is what I believe is missing in municipalities, and the successful ones have a strong economic development, civic literacy. They know the terminology, they understand the different components of economic development, from the social component, the library, to the chamber, the role, advocacy, events, etc. What is that role? But we need to understand what those holes and gaps are. And part of the next step is to have further conversations and start building a business case based on community of where do we need to go based on civic literacy on ECDev. And not just town, let's go hire somebody. No, we need to build a foundational component of economic development with that entity to move it forward. And it will be conversations with the chamber. So that's the next step, is not just to fire money into this is what we need to do, because we need to build it out with the people that know how to build out that foundational component. But it starts with having smart people around the table that understand what that system looks like. And I think 13 Ways is really demonstrating what that knowledge could look like from a local perspective. Because we do have the smarts in the community, but just to, again, bring them together with a plan focus is what I believe needs to happen.
Yeah, there are municipalities that have created full-on economic development corporations so they can own property, not just, subsidize things or and there's boards of trade, and like there's so many different examples. There are enhanced chambers of commerce that have changed their mandate from representing businesses in the community to being active partners in economic development, and it takes a different structure. Because sometimes chambers of commerce are a little hampered. If the chamber wants to move forward, to be a more active player, there's lots of businesses that can say, no, that's not your role, and they withdraw their membership, and then you're out of funding, and then you have a challenge. So, I mean, but there are enhanced chambers all the way to full economic development corporations and everything in between. The key to this is to figure out what's going to work best for not just the business community, but the business community and the municipal corporation and the volunteers and people, the schools and the hospitals and everyone who lives in the community. Because as Todd reminded us after the presentation, this is a community development plan. Everyone needs to take an active role. So it will take everyone walking in the same direction.
Doug, I wouldn't mind pitching in a little bit here on these, excuse me, I guess special events and that type of thing and the impact they've had. But I know since this and our council, I'm really have to give them credit for what we've done, but we've come up with a pretty good July 1st celebration now. We got a soapbox derby and a car show and these kind of things. But I think we've got unlimited opportunities, like the scarecrow thing. I went down because just nobody would take it over and run it, or a winter festival, these kind of things. So somehow we've got to get a group, and these can't all fall back on the town staff, because believe me, they're working probably 110% of their job now. But I think somehow we've got to create that body of people, and it would be a huge undertaking, just say for the chamber to take it on. But Doug, you said there's always the opportunity of a parallel group, like a board of trade, that might work together with the chamber or something that could. But what we need to make those things happen, they can happen. Golly, we proved that, how easy it is to get a great 100-foot dinner on Main Street put together with a couple of people with some knowledge and access to a group that we're gung-ho about it. But I mean, golly, there's lots of things. I had one individual that came to us with an idea of a soapbox derby, and it was, people came to that thing and couldn't believe it. Man, this is the kids, just unreal. But anyways, these are the kind of ideas I think we can get started with economic development. And although if you can get this place busy every weekend, the businesses are the ones to benefit mainly, not so much the town staff and that kind of thing. Although we like to coordinate things as much as and help as much as we can, because I know Todd's not that busy. But anyway,
I'm always thinking about ways to attract other people and to grow. And for something like the soapbox derby, kids would love to do that. You could create a separate category for people outside of the community that bring their soapbox to town for a race. And it's easy to put a flyer in and ask the schools in Red Deer to put it up. And just imagine how many people, you get 50 people that sign up, and they bring their families, and they come out and they eat in the restaurants, and they're spending time downtown, and every dollar they spend is another dollar added to the community. There's so many cool things that can be done with that.
A fellow that was staying at our campground 2 summers ago, and he took his grandchildren into this soapbox derby just for a day to do something to do. Wow. believe it or not, he had 3 kits at home and had built 3 soapbox cars that winter. And unfortunately we canceled it, but because of COVID. But anyways, yeah, this is the kind of, I think something like that could snowball into an incredible situation with, with just a good idea just to try. And I think there's lots of those, but believe me, we've got to, I'm not sure where that nucleus of energy is going to come from to operate, run these things. But that's what we need is help in that regard, because Stuart and his staff and everybody have got some great ideas, but we don't have the staff to do it all ourselves.
Yeah.
Just to make a point, so the Board of Trade is one of 15 different entities that could be considered. I just want to make it clear that there's no consideration of what entity that is. Board of Trade has been referenced a few times, but we don't know what that is. So just be loose on using that term. You can use it in the conversation as an entity, but that's one of several that we could build in the community. And so I want to respond to the question from Darkwoods. A great startup business in our community, and totally appreciate the comment and the question. And to the town regulatory, we need to catch up as well. What regulations are we creating to hamper businesses? So where are the yardsticks, town, as an organization, as a government body? Tell us where the yardsticks are, town, so businesses can work within those parameters. And those are areas we need to focus on. And I totally admit, as the CEO of the town, that we have inconsistencies within our bylaws and our rules. So I think we need to clean up those. We need to hear from you of what those restrictions, how we're hampering your business. But because we're regulatory, we need to have some standard. But right now, the yardsticks are moving, and we're creating confusion, and it doesn't help us in providing a service. It creates frustrations, not great on our PR. So I do appreciate those comments, but we do need to hear from you on what those things that we're doing is creating difficulty for your business, and we can adjust accordingly. But we have to look at the whole picture and not just one specific block of the community. And unfortunately, that's how we have to do it. But certainly appreciate that comment and that experience as you build with that business.
I think one of the questions earlier, which might be a good one to wrap this up, are what are the next steps? I think that might be a fun thing for us to maybe carve out that path, especially because I don't know about you guys, but the more we can talk about exciting things that are happening next year, the better. So maybe I'll throw that over to Todd or Stuart for a little bit of discussion around what next steps look like.
Definitely. Yeah. Do you want me to take that one, Todd? I'll maybe start and you can jump in. I think as was alluded to earlier, I think it was Todd that mentioned communication will be a huge component of this plan. I think in terms of immediate next steps, that's definitely what we'll be carrying out is engagements, raising the awareness of it within the community, just as we're doing tonight, keeping that going. From there, as Todd alluded to, Council has included some budgetary provisions in the 2021 operating budget with respect to some of the recommendations. So those will hopefully be approved going into Monday's budget presentation. Specifically, what that looks like would be around some sort of an urban design plan, which would sort of provide for the allocation of resources towards some of the items presented, such as twinkle lights, interactive seating, pulling all of those components together and engaging stakeholders in the process of doing so. And then also starting to allocate capacity towards whatever that potential entity could or could not look like. So again, that's more from the financial aspect of it. But again, I think the key is communicating, mobilizing the community. Again, we've got this plan now that is very much action oriented. So pulling together those stakeholders and taking a look at the vision and working together to figure out how we best achieve it.
When everybody's muted, I feel like there's like no one flying the plane. Like, oh my gosh. Sorry, Todd, you go.
No, my goal, next steps is to, I'm hoping council sees in the budget on Monday, we're presenting the budget formally. We went through 3 days of deliberations at the end of November. Hoping council sees, well, here's you through this conversation that moving forward based on what has been presented in the budget is the first steps. And that is, again, some dollars allocated on building out that entity and then building out the urban design component within 2021. And then I think there's still ongoing conversations about post-COVID events and building on that. So lots of actions, but that's where my focus would be, is to get the budget passed by council, hopefully on Monday.
Okay.
There's a question that came through from Luann. Oh no, from Kathy. What are council thoughts? And as a newly elected concerned councillor, my thoughts are, and I'll say it again, and I've said it many times, I'd like to thank again Doug and Heather for all their work, patience, and diligence working with council. That I've only been with the group for about 7 months, and it's a great plan. And we've heard many times this evening about it's a community plan. And, you know, we're going to meet Monday. I know there's some line items in the budget. You're going to see if the budget's, when it's approved, there are a couple of line items in there that will show that council is very serious about beginning and carrying this through. So I don't want to get ahead of the budget deliberations, but after Monday, you will, once that budget's approved, you'll see a couple of initiatives in there that's going to help motivate and take this plan to the next level. But I can't stress enough that, you know, like there's 7,800 people that live in Innisfail. And I'd like to go back to Heather's stat on the monetary 3 to 1 for every dollar that's invested, we get 3 in return. Let's think about if each of us, just off this call tonight and seeing what's been presented, if each of us went out, just each of us, we could engage 3 people. So we're looking at, now we've got 100 people. And if those 100 people went out and talked to 3 people, now we've got 300. So this is how it's going to explode. It's entirely up to us whether or not this is going to be, and I say us, it's our community. So that's sort of my soapbox. Doug and Heather and council have heard that a couple of times. So this is now for the community. I'd like to thank all the community members that joined us tonight. I'm looking forward to really working with everyone, and I can't wait for the next steps, the action plan that's going to be put forth here. And we'll be looking for your support, your participation, and your engagement. So please don't be afraid to step up. It's great work and it is our future. So thank you again, Doug, Heather, and all the panelists today. I have to check out. So to all of you, have a very safe holiday season, and to yours from mine, Merry Christmas, and we'll be seeing all of you certainly in the new year. So thanks again, everyone.
Awesome. So I think that takes us to just about 2 hours together. I think at this time, maybe we'll throw it over to Stuart, Todd, or Doug for some closing thoughts.
If I had any closing thoughts, it would also be sparked by Luann's great comments. The proposal, as Heather put it together, really starts with the easiest spends, the smallest spends that may have the biggest impact, and they work to more expensive things that are bigger changes. And we always recommend you follow in that process, because if you spend a little bit of money and you can get the biggest results, and you start to build the momentum and build the change, and then the community buys in because of it, and then it's easier to do the bigger things. It's just like marketing. There's way too many communities trying to, like I said, attract 1,000 people, but no one's actually asked how they're going to attract the first one. And if you can't figure out why the first family is going to move to your community, what that value proposition is, you're not going to get 1,000. You won't get any. But everyone's trying to do that big win and that big hit. Even when Apple came out with their first smartphone, they didn't design this whole new technology and say, we're going to build this smartphone and hopefully everybody will want it. They actually did what Heather does. They came up with a muse, a prototype person, and it was a 24-year-old professional business person, and said, what are they looking for? They want to be more connected. They like technology. They want devices that do more. And they didn't build the iPhone and then figure out who they were going to sell it to. They figured out who they were marketing to and then built the product they were looking for. And that's the same thing with you guys. It's start small with some of those small investments, so that, because you know who you're going to attract. Start small, and they'll come for the twinkle lights, and they'll come for the swings, and they'll come for the live music, and they'll come for new shops, and then they'll be coming for the 10 brew pubs on Main Street for the tour and the live music, and they'll want to buy a house there because you have a great soccer program, and it'll come. But if you do all the big investments first, you'll miss the point of the family you're trying to appeal to, the person you're trying to appeal to. So we always recommend start small, have good wins, and then build up momentum, and the rest will come.
Well, I totally agree with you, Doug. I've been told so many times at some of these little special events how people say, God, we should have been doing this years ago. And it's always nice to have something, take the kids, get the kids out, do something different. And, I think the opportunities supported me there. This COVID thing, well, we were on a roll. We would have had a great year in 2020, believe me, with everything we had it planned. But believe me, we're going to do our best, I'm sure, again, to carry on in the new year. But it's been a tough one. But Doug, you and Heather, I want to thank you very much, and please have a safe and merry holiday. Thanks, Doug and Heather.
How about another joke, Heather?
Oh my goodness. Okay. Okay. People have heard this one before, but it's my favorite. Why can you never trust stairs? Because they're always up to something.
I thought it was because they always let you down.
I love how many people. So many people are signing off.
So did you ever hear when? Did you hear when Tarzan went out to get dinner?
No.
And he got a snake. So he got a snake, and then he got a pygmy, and they made snake and pygmy pie for dinner.
Oh my gosh. That's the real show. That's why people are tuning in.
Oh, well, rough crowd.
Yeah.
Right? I know. Stuart especially, he's the worst.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know, Todd or Stuart. I think we, on behalf of Doug and myself, thank you guys so much for giving us the time, and this is really fun. And like I said, it was just nice to even just have some like time with people. Like this is nice.
Oh, and if you want help on the downtown project, on the downtown reconstruction, or even some advice, I would gather people over and over again and ask them to make a list of all the things they'd like to see downtown. Then you can group them, right? A casino doesn't go with, a brew pub, and they don't all go together, and create, out of 1,000 ideas, pull the best 100, and you sort of create a vision for downtown, and then find a graphic artist to represent that after you've had meetings with all the land. Anyway, if you want a hand, even if you just want a process, I'll give it to you, because it would be an exciting project to work on. You're going to have every other community jealous about what you guys are doing.
So again, each component of this plan requires some form or a lot of public engagement. So this is not just now we're going. Entity piece development requires here to train.
I guess it didn't stop.
I had a dream that the train would end one day.
I love the train.
There's more.
Yeah, I had a dream.
And of course, thanking everybody for their 2 hours. Appreciate your feedback and your participation.
Well, good night, everybody, and have a great holiday season, albeit socially distanced, etc. But yeah, feel free to reach out to us if there's any more chats you'd like to have. Otherwise, have a great evening. And I'm going to go back to parenting because there's a lot of stuff going on behind us.
Merry Christmas.
Bye, everybody.
Merry Christmas.
Bye. Thank you.
Take care.
Yeah, I'm going to sign off too, Doug.
See you, Jim.